I was diagnosed in a routine mammogram in the fall of 21. And I remember they said, oh, there's a growth in your breast and we need to have an ultrasound. And I said, oh, I always have all kinds of things going on. It's nothing special. And the radiologist came in and said, you've got a very bad cancer. Said, all right. So anyway, so I ended up doing an ultrasound, and they found a rare cancer that's very prolific and aggressive called apocrine cancer. And it was stage 3C, which is right before 4, pretty much. So I was referred to the cancer center and met a very nice oncologist who I saw a couple of times, and then she gave me a rundown on the kinds of things that I should expect as treatment. And she said that this cancer is aggressive and it also does not react to chemo very much. So they have about a 5 times doses of normal chemo, and the amount of side effects were just enormous, I said, well, I'm not going to go through that no matter what. So her answer was, okay, but I give you about a year. So I decided to go to my doctor in Austria that I see in the summers usually and ask his opinion, because generally European doctors are a lot more open to different kinds of treatment as opposed to just the pure medical answers. And his specialty, besides just talking, being busy with older people, he also does Ayurvedic medicine fairly intensely, but has lots of fingers in lots of pies, really. And so he said, I would think you should be doing some chemo. American doctors usually are willing to do less than they had prescribed. And I didn't have that impression at all from my oncologist. So, but if not, I recommend that you do high dose vitamin C and mistletoe injections. And so he guided me through the next year pretty much with the kinds of treatment that he had suggested. And then I spent the summer in Austria, so he was in direct contact with me during that time and helped. So I started right away. On your suggestion, I started with the ketogenic diet, and then did the mistletoe and the vitamin C very regularly. The diet definitely made me lose about 30 pounds in a few weeks. And I was very strict with it pretty much through the summer. When I went to see my oncologist after 7 months, she had another ultrasound done for me and said that the tumor had not increased at all in those 7 months, and was very surprised about that. Obviously, that's not what an aggressive cancer is supposed to be doing. So, and then in the summer, my doctor over there thought that it hadn't grown either, but he was relying on blood work, and apparently the particular cancer does not show in blood work. So somehow that he didn't know that. He's a general doctor. He's not an oncologist. And so when I came back and had another ultrasound done, it turned out that it had grown from 2.5 centimeters to 4 or something like that. So, and the doctor the oncologist here had already talked to me about maybe doing an operation, partial mastectomy in the fall, and we could talk about it and see. There was no rush. Meantime, I had a lot of extra cancerous growth on the skin, and it kept trying to actually open up, and then maybe would be an open wound, which would not be so great. So I was also for having a mastectomy in order to avoid that. And we did that in early October. So the tumor was completely removed. The breast is gone. The operation went quickly and easily. Didn't have much problems with it at all. I kept, the diet going. I kept all of the treatments going. I wasn't maybe quite as strict about it. I didn't really want to lose any more weight. And so I'm not necessarily having great GKI numbers, but I do stick with regular fasting. And so every once in a while I do get a good ketone reading again. It's once a week or something. So, and after I was done with that in November, which was a year later, I had another CT scan and one of those nuclear tests in order to check for metastases, and there were none. So it was very localized. I should also explain that my surgeon had said he was being careful not to remove too many lymph nodes, because it was fairly easy to get lymphedema in my left arm, and that would keep me from playing cello. And it was an important thing for me to be able to keep playing. And so he said, I'm being careful, and you do radiation after this. So he was sort of pinning me down to that, making sure. And so did my oncologist. She also thought I should do some radiology in order to get rid of the last little bits that would be in that area, especially since it's localized. There's no reason to do the rest of the body. And so radiology seemed to be the way to go. So I transfer that. I mean, you're normally supposed to have between 8 and 12 weeks, and then you do the radiology. I had some concerts in the middle of January, so I said, can I please not start till January? And they were okay with that. In fact, the radiologist was quite open to all kinds of extra things that I might be doing, like keeping the diet going, do my vitamin C, doing my Mistletoe treatment. And the doctor in Austria encouraged me quite a bit to do that, and that Mistletoe would help with the radiation side effects. And he also made sure that I got extra selenium, so I actually used that as part of the vitamin C infusions. They also gave me an infusion of selenium regularly. So all of those things kept me from having any side effects during the radiation treatment too. So it was really fairly easy. It was 6 weeks of radiation treatment. And I've been done with that for a couple of weeks now. So that's basically it. I've not, except for the operation made itself, I've always felt fine. I've always had my energy, even though I lost a lot of weight, and strength, short of being older and maybe not being able to run up the mountains anymore. I'm really fine. What was actually pushing the operation more than the tumor itself was that skin lesion that I had. And even in May or April and May, my nursing friend said, this may be open anytime. And it never did over the whole summer. So I think that's part of what helped, what the diet and other treatment actually helps keeping from happening. So that, I think, is mainly what I was lucky about, that it really didn't get worse. I was fine with losing a certain amount of weight, but I was a little worried about it losing too much and maybe having some effects of that. I never did get to that point, but I at one point I was down to 105, and I started thinking, well, wait a minute. So I know you recommended that I eat a little extra cheese and nuts in order not to use, and then of course the ketones are not that great anymore if I eat more than recommended by the diet itself. Now, I don't have any direct proof that what I'm doing now, which is not, I eat quite a bit, but within 6 hours, whether that is okay or not, or whether this would encourage further growth of a tumor. I don't know. We'll find out in the long run, I think. It takes a few days to get used to the keto diet, but at that point, I had a lot of reasons for doing it. So it didn't really feel very difficult to me. It is sometimes problematic and socially, but everybody's now used to it. I just don't eat when I go out with people. and it's not always easy, but I'm actually going back to some of my favorite recipes from before and just leave out certain parts, so I don't have to necessarily follow a keto diet, but I just make up my own recipes, and that's fun.
How you heard about the metabolic therapies, but were most of them from us, or were there other places you heard about them?
Just you and Maggie. Okay. That's all I knew about. And,
okay. All right.
I thought it was worth following up. I had asked Maggie several years ago when my cousin in Berlin was very ill, and she was actually almost dying already. It was a little late, but I did know a little bit more about it at that point. And so when I had that cancer scare, so to speak, I decided I know where to go.
Yeah, and did you do any more research, or did you just sort of go with our recommendations?
Well, I read the books, that you had recommended, and I find them really helpful and very, very well written. I sent you recently a website. I don't know whether you've been aware of that one, that interviews several American doctors who are also using mistletoe, and it really sounded like it's becoming more established in this country. They had all studied some in Germany and Switzerland, as far as I know, but still they are definitely convinced that mistletoe does a lot for our immune system, and doing it regularly. That's another question I had. How long should I keep going with mistletoe? Should I just do it for another few months? And they said the rest of your life, if you've had more than stage 1 or 2, keep going. So maybe not every month, but regular applications of mistletoe seem to be very warranted. So, and I'm happy to do that.
Your American oncologist, what was her initial take, or their initial take, about going for this other approach?
Well, as I said, she said she was sorry that I felt so strongly about it, but she couldn't encourage me beyond a year. She was very clear about that. And she sort of dismissed me. And then when I came back 7 months later, and I mean, she had encouraged me to check in with her, then she said, I think we could be doing an operation. I think we could have regular meetings every 3 months. Just let me check. In fact, she said last time I saw her, I don't think we need a CT scan every year, but occasionally. So, she feels she can palpate, since it was so clearly local. She could palpate and see whether things look okay, and otherwise she'll recommend some other things. So
that's great. And did she want to know at all about the stuff that you did, or?
Well, she knows about it, but she never commented on it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's interesting. Yeah. Initially, I'd actually had 2 teams working on me, one in Denver and one in Fort Collins, and they very much agreed on what I needed to do. And so, in fact, the 2 oncologists, the one in Denver and one in Fort Collins, work on research together. So it was very easy for me just to say, I'm going to stay in Fort Collins and work with her.
I know you can't say for sure, of course, but how would you describe what you think that the metabolic treatments you did for you, right? How helpful were they?
Well, I can say several things. I seem to be really low on inflammations of any kind. I used to have ankle problems every evening, and that's just gone. I don't need any support hose anymore. I've often had sort of finger and by age, arthritic kinds of things in the fingers. I have nothing of that anymore. So it's definitely anti-inflammatory. I think in terms of my mind, it's been clearing nicely with this diet also. I don't have these sort of cloudy times. I'm still having trouble with certain words, and that's not going to change. But I don't feel sort of, what do you call it? Not cloudy, but you have another term that you
hazy.
Yeah, right, or whatever. I don't have those anymore either. I seem to be just clear and feeling good, having my energy level that I usually do. I have, after I heard that I'd have a year, I gave up my job and went into retirement, but now I'm sort of regretting that because I still have too much energy for being retired. So I have to find ways in which I can be busy.
That is fantastic. That's so good to hear that.
So I think all of that is the diet, pretty much. Now, what is most effective for the cancer? That's, I think, a question mark. I have a suspicion that mistletoe is pretty high up because I had some problems of the cancer growing over the summer, and I think maybe the mistletoe I used over there wasn't quite up to snuff. I don't know. I didn't have the same skin reaction that I usually do over here, and there may have been something that was not quite right with the stuff I used over there. So that's why I'm thinking maybe mistletoe is pretty damn important.
Got it. Yeah. And did you do some fasting too?
Oh, yeah. I do weekly fasting.
Mm-hmm. Weekly. Okay.
like
one day a week?
I did do the intermittent fasting every day, 6 hours and 18 hours. And then on the weekend, I do between 24 and 30 hours or something like that.
Once. So you're going to take like one day off of eating each week.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I think I'm a very stubborn type. And so when I decide I'm not comfortable with something, I will do something about it. It was not necessarily so much research, but if there are any alternatives, I will give them a try. And I've seen the difference to several friends who since then have had cancer and just don't go that route. I mean, I've a young woman who's, she has 2 kids and she's doing the heavy chemo, the heavy everything, and she's miserable. But, she could have tried the diet. She could have tried other stuff, and she's not doing it. So, I can see, or one of my colleagues just came down with a terrible blood cancer and taking a pill that's $13,000 every day, stuff like that. But actually, he's had reactions to that. But I think once he feels better and doesn't have so much pain, he will probably try the diet also. That's my suspicion, but he certainly didn't try to start with, so by some people, if they have a lot of pain or if they feel really weak and have problems with their stomach when they have chemo to start with, maybe they just won't try the metabolic diet right away because it doesn't seem to fit into the schedule. But I think it's fairly common that people just go by the advice of their doctors. And I'm not an American. I think maybe I'm more likely to look for other possibilities. I always have, and with my health, I've never just done what the American doctor said I should be doing. So I don't know. As I said, I'm stubborn. Yeah, and assume that you can feel well, that you don't have to go through horrible experiences in terms of your body. If possible, try to do something towards that.
I'm just so happy that you're doing well. Like, it just makes me just feel good. So
to start with, I was thinking, I don't have to worry about my pension. I don't have to worry about this and that and the other because I only have a year. And then now I have to worry about things again.
Well, it's good to have those problems, I think.
But it really was a different mindset. It's interesting.
Yeah.